like discrete, essentially. I'm doing that for the students who are taking the state test. Again, only for the state test. If I am looking over here at my state test, technically I actually have nobody logged into the state test right now. If I look over, you say that you're taking the state test, I will send you the recording of class today, so that way you can finish up your classwork, because I gave you guys 5 days in class to finish up the state test. That means that you wasted your time on those 5 days since you didn't finish the math test before, so you still need to make up the classwork. And I'm making each one of these worth 25 points. And I'm doing that so you guys have more points in the grade book to kind of boost your grade, because I'm giving you all the work that you need to do. And the only part you're doing on your own is the guided practice, but we still go over it. Okay. And this is all stuff that you will use in the future. If we go back to what we talked about from last week, our rules that we had adding rational numbers, right? We had adding rational numbers of the same sign and adding rational numbers of a different sign. When we add numbers, rational numbers of the same sign, right? Or we find the sum, our values get larger, right? Or greater as we move along the number line. So if we add two negative numbers, right? We're going to have a greater negative value. So what we want to conceptualize from this is that if we have negative numbers and they get bigger in value, that doesn't mean that the number itself is smaller. It means that it is less than 0, right? But its absolute value is still getting larger, right? Okay, so watch as we moved across the number line. We added two positive numbers. We moved it to the right for it to gain value. In the positive direction, if we had two negative numbers, it gained value in the negative direction. Did I say that backwards? We gained value in the positive direction. We had positive numbers. Gained value in the negative direction when we had negative numbers. Then when we had different signs, that rule is a little bit hard, right? When we added numbers with different signs, meaning we had one positive and one negative, right? So with our adding rational numbers with the same sign, we had either both negative or both positive, so it was one or the other. Right here, we're going to have both. We're going to have one positive, one negative. And when we did that, we had to find the difference, meaning subtract the absolute values, and then we used the sign of the rational number with the greatest value, right? So we had a number line rule where if it's positive numbers, we move to the right, negative numbers move to the left. So we had negative 3.5 plus 2.5 in our example, right? Since we added a positive number, we needed to start at the negative 3.5 and move to the right, okay, from our number line rule. Then this week, we did the additive inverse, where we learned that the opposite means the same as additive inverse, right? So the opposite of a number is the same distance from 0 on a number line as the original number, but on the other side. Meaning that we take this word distance to tell us that the value of the number itself is going to remain the same. So let's say our number was 6. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go the same distance, right, as the original number. So that means I'm going to go 6 spaces over, but on the other side. So since this one was positive, I need to go 6 spaces over to the left side of 0, making it negative 6. So the only opposite part of my number would be the signs of positive and negative. If I had negative 6, its additive inverse would be positive 6, because I'm switching the signs. But the distance, meaning value, is going to stay the same. And as we move on in our educational careers, this will be imperative for Pythagorean theorem in 8th grade. And in physics, it's going to be essential that we understand that the additive inverse is just the negative or positive or opposite value of our distance, because we're going to be working with distances in physics, and we'll work with distances also in geometry and math class as we move on. But if we take it to a different form or a different subject, we'll use this a lot in physics. Okay. So now we did this last class period. So now we are here at subtracting positive rational numbers. So last week we were adding, right? Now we are subtracting. And if you guys have noticed, I don't really have a new rule, right? I just have steps. And the reason for this is because we are taking our old rules and kind of just rearranging them. So now I'm subtracting positive rational numbers. You remember my rule with adding rational numbers with different signs. Even though the order of operations itself was adding, the rule said I was going to find the difference, meaning the way that I find the answer, I need to subtract. Okay, so we're going to see something similar to that right here. Okay, so today we are going to be learning our sixth rule, sixth lesson. We will be subtracting positive rational numbers. If I was to see this in an equation, my first value in my equation can be positive or negative. Because all this says is that I am subtracting a positive rational number. So my first value can be positive or negative. The imperative part is that I know when I am subtracting from my order of operations, I am only subtracting a positive value, right? So I could have -1 minus 6. That would work. But I cannot have like -1 minus -6. Because then I'd be subtracting a negative rational number. Okay? And if I look at this, kind of looks like the rule that I had here, right? When adding rational numbers of different signs. And I'll show you guys what I mean by that, because we're going to take that rule and kind of reverse it. All right. So using a number line, another very, very, very important part of what we're doing today is learning how to read the number line. I know I said that for section 5 with the additive inverse, and being able to understand that with the additive inverse that I have the positive and negative, and the sum of those values is always equal to 0. And that 0 is not positive, nor is it negative, right? It's just 0. Is that nice transition number where on a number line I go from positive integers for infinity, and then on the other side of 0 I go from -0.00001, infinite, all the way up to negative infinity. Okay, this is that point from where I go in the opposite direction. Okay. We are going to get to, again, practice with our number line. Our additive inverse, we know that our origin point was 0, right? And we worked with 0. And I showed you guys the number line, right? Sometimes with the number line, like when we had values that were greater than what our number line went to, we had to be able to think outside of the number line box, right? And know how to identify what numbers would be on which side. So we know that no matter how far to the right we go from 0, it will be positive. We now know that no matter how far left I go from 0, it will be a negative value, right? So if I'm looking at the number line and I need to be able to read the number line, I have these little lines here, these little dashes, and these have their own values. We need to think about it as a fraction, right? Our rational numbers, right? We have 1 over 1. right? That equals 1. If I have 2 over 1, remember that's how we can look at rational numbers and see them as whole values. Well, if I look here, between 0 and 1, see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, right? That means that I divided my whole value right here by 4, right? So here's 1/4, here's 1/4, here's a 4th, here's a 4th. So that means that each little line is worth 1/4, because together I have 1/4. This section here would be 2/4, or half, right? If I look at 2/4, I should already be able to tell that that's a half. 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1. 2 divided by 4 equals 2. So simplified, 2/4 is equal to 1/2. Okay, if I add another 4th, that's 3/4. And here I have 4 over 4, right? Or 1. If I look at it also, since my problem here, it says to start at 6.5, I know that 1/4, 1 divided by 4 is equal to 0.25. Also think about it like if you have quarters for $1, right? 4 quarters makes $1. So if I have a quarter, that's 25 cents. Then the second quarter, right? If I have 2, then I have 50 cents, which is same as 0.5. Third quarter would give me 75 cents of 0.75. My third little line is worth 0.75. All right, so there's our background on how to read that number line. On this particular number line, each little dash is worth 1/4. I add them as I move towards the next number, right? So on the positive side, as I move to the right, if I start here, right, it's in between 2 and 3, so I know that my value would be greater than 2, but less than 3, so I have 2.25 here. 2.5 would be here. So let's find our 6.5. So I have 6 right here. This first little line is 6.25. So that means here my second line is 6.5. Okay, so here's my starting point, positive 6.5. And now for step 2, I'm going to be subtracting. We're doing opposite of adding like we did last time. So since we are subtracting, that means we're not going to move to the right because we're subtracting. Our value is going to be getting smaller. We're taking away. So we're going to move 7.25 to the left because we are subtracting a positive number. Okay, because right here, 7.25 is positive, right? Because there's no negative sign in front of it indicating that it's a negative number. It's very important that we understand that we are moving to the left because we are subtracting a positive number. So if I look here, I have my fraction, right? 6.5. I know that if I go 4 little lines over, that's going to be 1 whole, right? Because 4 over 4 is equal to 1. So I'm going to go over 4 lines. I could go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's minus 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's minus 2. Or if I can see it visually, if I go from the half mark on each side, then I'm going over 1 whole one, right? So this would be minus 3. This would be minus 4. This is going to be minus 5. This is going to be minus 6. I have minus 7.25, so I need to go a little bit further. Okay, go for it right there. Minus 6. Okay, here's minus 7. Okay, and I need to go my 0.25. I know each little line is worth 0.25, so I'm just going to make a leap over that small line there. So that takes me to minus 7.25. So now I need to read the number line. reading the number line, that puts me in between 0 and -1. So I know that my value is going to be 0, -0, something, right? Because it is less than -1, so my whole value is not going to be -1. It is greater than 0, so I need to count my little lines over. I have a quarter, got 2 quarters, and this right here is worth 3 quarters, or 75, 0.75, right? Like 75 cents. So my answer for 6.5 minus 7.25 is negative 0.75. Does that make sense? In the chat. All right. So if we're getting it, we'll keep going. All right, so this next part is going to be practice, but I want to do the practice with you guys because we do have our guided practice next that I'll have you guys do on your own, and then from there, I'll see if we need to go over the guided practice together. So I don't want to force you guys to leap before you're ready. So we are going to practice reading the number line again. In between 0 and -1, right, I see that my whole value is going to be divided by, let's see, 1, 2. That means that my denominator will be 2. One line will be worth 1/2, right? So this here would be negative 0.5, because 1 divided by 2 equals 0.5. So I need to, just like our rule set up here with the other problem, I need to start at 6.5. So in this one, I'm going to start at negative 1.5. And I told you guys, when I look at my equation, as long as I'm subtracting a positive value, it doesn't matter if I start with a positive or negative value, as long as when I'm subtracting, the number I'm subtracting is positive. So starting at negative 1.5, mark it here. Here's -1. It's going to be between -1 and -2, right? Because the value itself is larger than 1. So here's -1.5. I'm going to highlight. So now I'm going to move to the left, right? Because I'm subtracting a positive number. So I'm going to move to the left 4.5. Starting here. Here's -1. I'm going to go to the next half mark. Here's -2. And remember, each one of these is worth 0.5, so I could look at it as -0.5. Minus 0.5 would be -1 there. Minus 0.5 would be -1.5. Here would be -2, right? So these little lines here are worth 1/2, but I'm jumping over 2. Okay, so here I have -3. Here's -4. I'm not done yet because I need to go 4.5, right, for my distance. So I need to go over 1/2. So now I'm at -4.5 or -4.5. So that means that I am at a step 3 where I need to read the number line after moving. Okay, so on the number line, my value is -6. See, the line here indicates that is -6. So my answer for -1.5 minus 4.5 is -6. With this one, I want to show you guys a trick that is very helpful, something that I do when I have negative numbers, and what relates us close to this section 4, where we had adding rational numbers with different signs. We need to find the difference of the absolute values. When we are subtracting, we can add the absolute values. Okay, of these numbers. But the trick is when you add the absolute values, you're going to look at the number as negative 1.5. That's not the crazy one. But when I'm subtracting a positive number, I'm going to take the subtraction sign with me and use it as a sign for that positive integer. I know it seems kind of tricky, but honestly, it's going to make life a little bit easier. So my negative number, the one that started out negative, my absolute value is going to be 1.5. My absolute value for negative 4.5, even though it was positive over here, it's going to be 4.5. I take the sign of the larger number, which is 4.5, but I need to remember that I turned it into a negative, right? Instead of subtracting. I'm now going to add these together. If I add 1.5 and 4.5 together, I get 1.5, 4.5. 0.5 plus 0.5 is equal to 10 or 1, right? So I drop my decimal. I've got 1, 2, 4 plus 4, that's 6. That gives me 6. Or if I use the other rule, I take the larger value sign and add it, giving me negative 6. So if I wasn't using a number line, if I add these two numbers, the absolute values of these, I will get 6. And if I use the subtraction sign and turn this number negative, if I use the sign of the larger number, take that negative sign with me, I get the same answer by not using a number line. Does that make sense? It seems a little complicated, but honestly, we'll keep practicing with it, but it makes it a little bit easier if you don't have a number line. And you'll see that with your guided practice, you'll have to add two numbers together. That would be a really long number line, kind of like when I did the difference in temperature when I had positive 12 and negative 57. Remember, I had just like rows and rows and rows of numbers. I want to prevent you from having to make really long number lines. All right, so moving on to our next practice. In between 0 and 1, my whole number is divided by 1, 2, split into two sections, right? So that means that my little lines are worth a half, right? My denominator is going to be 2 since it's divided into two sections. Okay, and then for us this time, luckily, we don't need to convert it into a decimal because it says 2.5 here, right? Written as a fraction. So I know that to start, right, I just need to start at my first number here, which is positive 2.5. So I'm going to go over to 2. It's going to be in between 2 and 3. It's 2.5, so this is worth a half. So it's going to be positive 2.5 right here. This will be my starting point. Then I need to move to the left 3, because I'm subtracting positive 3. So I'm going to go over, this is minus 1, over to the next half mark. This is minus 2, and over one more time, this is minus 3. So now I just need to read my number line. My number line is ending spot is in between 0 and negative 1, meaning it's less than negative 1, greater than 0 though. On the negative side, so it's going to be negative 0.5 or negative 1/2. Right? This right here is negative 1/2. Does that make sense so far, you guys? Okay. No questions? No, does that make sense or no questions? DeMarcus, your no, did that mean no questions or no, it's not making sense? How about we do this practice one and we'll see if you still feel like your answer is a no. All right, so on our number line, I'm looking here. No, oh, no questions. Okay, perfect. So I'm starting here at negative 6.25, and I am subtracting a positive number. So now if I look at my values, if my whole number right here, right, from one whole number to the next whole number, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 groups essentially. So that means my number line, or my little lines, are all going to be worth 1/4, right? Because the whole number is divided by 4, right? So I've got 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 right there, right? So my first starting off point, I'm going to start here at negative 6.25. So that means I need to find my negative 6.25. I can see that I will need to be in between -7 and -6. Negative 6.25 is larger in value than 6, but less than 7. So negative 6.25 is going to be right here on this first line, because the first line, right, is worth just 1/4. This one's a half or 2/4. So I'm going to start here at negative 6.25. I am subtracting a positive number, right? So I will be moving to the left 3.5 spaces. So for my first subtraction, I'm going to go over 1. Since I started here at the 0.25 section or line, I'm going to go over to the next 0.25 line to subtract the whole number. Here's -1. Here's -2. Okay, -3. I need to make sure that I land here at that 0.25 value. So I'm at -3. Now I need to do the 0.5. Here's 0.25. Second one would give me 0.5, right? So my ending spot is right here in between -10 and -9. So that tells me that I'm going to have a -9, because it's not greater than -10. I didn't go past -10. And then I went over 1, 2, 3 of those little lines. So that's going to be 3/4, right? Because it's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. And 3/4 is equal to 75 cents, right? So I can put my 0.75 right there. I have -9.75. I'm going to show this to you guys real fast, since we just did this right here on our number line, right? So it's going to easily make sense. If I take my absolute values of these two numbers, but I'm going to keep my subtraction sign, I'm going to take that, keep it as a negative, just in case that side is larger. So my absolute value of -6.25 is going to be 6.25. My absolute value of subtract 3.5 is going to be 3.5. Now, I know since I am moving to the left because I'm subtracting a number, right? I'm subtracting a positive number. I'm going to add these together right? Because no matter what, I am increasing my value to the left. So if I take 6.25 and I add 0.5, right? 5 plus 0 equals 5. 2 plus 5 equals 7. Drop down my decimal point. 6 plus 3 equals 9. My larger value was negative, so I'm going to take that negative sign and bring it over here to my 9.75. And I've got negative 9.75 without using my number line. Does that make sense? All right. Since there's no questions, I'm going to move on. And we're going to work on the guided practice. So I'll give you guys 4 minutes to complete the guided practice on your own. Make sure that you submit it. And if you are looking at it, it's crazy hard and you're not ready to submit, that's okay. But make sure that you do submit it before you exit out of the Nearpod today. So that way, when I go check it to give you credit for today's work, that you have answers. So I'm going to put on a 4-minute timer. Let you guys work on that. And then I'll check our answers. If you do get them all correct, I will give you a bonus point. Everyone will get credit for attempting. So let me share a timer.
With YouTube Premium, you can watch as many videos as you want without pausing for ads.
I just realized I was talking to you guys and I had myself muted. So I have a test that was submitted, but there's no work on it. So if you do submit, make sure that you put work down because I'm not going to give you points just for submitting a blank sheet. But looking over our answers, it looks like I will go over, I think, every single question. We have 12 minutes, so we have time to do that. So I am going to start with question 1. All right, so thanks, babe. All right, so now with our first question here, I have 2.5. If I look here in between each section, it's split up into 4 segments, right? So that means that my denominator is going to be 4. Right? I divided each section into 4 spaces, so each one's going to be worth 1/4. Each little section here is just 1/4. Okay? So that means, okay? So I'm starting at 2.5. This is a positive 2.5. So I will start here, positive 2.5, which is between 2 and 3, because 2.5 is greater than 2, but less than 3. It's actually very common to make the mistake of putting 2.5 in between 1 and 2. So there's why I keep saying that when I look at 2.5, I know that it's greater than 2, but less than the next whole number, right? All right, and from our rule, or steps that we looked at last time, we move to the left when we're subtracting a positive number. Okay, so I'm going to move over 4.25 spaces. So I'm going to go from 2.5, I'm going to go over to 1.5. That would be -1. Now I'm going to go over to the half mark. That's me -2. The next half, which is going to be -1/2, this will be negative -3. Going to -1 more, that puts me here, the half line, that's -4. Now I need to go over 1/4, which is just one little line segment, right? Let me hop over that next line. That's me -4.25. Okay, and now I need to read my number line. I am at a number that is between -1 and -2. So I know I'll have -1. Then with my whole number, I'm going to count over. I have -1 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So my answer is -1 3/4. Right, because this is increasing as I move left in value because I'm on the negative side. So it's easy to look at it and maybe think that if I move over 4 spaces, I'm at that half mark, but the answer should be -1 3/4 here at C. Okay. All right, so number 2. Actually, a lot of people got this one right, and I feel like this one was a harder one. All right, so Steve's science class is tracking the winter temperature in Nome, Alaska for a project. None of that's important to us, right? There's no values in here. Okay, so on Tuesday, the low temperature was 3 degrees, meaning on Tuesday, the temperature was equal to 3 degrees, positive 3 degrees, right? It's not negative 3 degrees. So Tuesday, we can say Tuesday is equal to 3 degrees. All right. So on Wednesday's low temperature was 8 degrees less than it was on Tuesday. So that gives me an inequality, right? I have a less than inequality. So that means for Wednesday, I'm going to need to figure out what the temperature is. So on Wednesday, that's equal to Tuesday's temperature minus 8 degrees, right? So if I plug my inequality, my value for Tuesday into my inequality, right? That's going to give me 3 degrees minus 8 degrees. Now, fortunately, I do have a number line, right? So I'm going to start here at 3. And I'm going to move to the left 5 numbers, right? So 5 whole numbers. So I'm going to go 1, here's minus 1, here's minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 5, minus 6, minus 7, and minus 8. Now that I've subtracted 8, I see here on the number line I'm at negative 5. All right, so 3 minus 8 equals negative 5 degrees. That tells me on Wednesday the temperature was negative 5 degrees. All right, so I want you guys to look at that, right? I'm subtracting 2 numbers with the same sign, right? So if I think about kind of what we learned earlier, if I can change my adding rational numbers and my subtracting rational numbers, mix up my rules because I didn't get a new rule, right? If I look at this and I think, I'm going to take the absolute values of these, right? I'll subtract the smaller value from the bigger value, right? 8's larger than 3, so 8 minus 3 is equal to 5. Remember, I told you I'm going to use the subtraction sign as a sign for 8. Right? So that means that my value is going to become negative. Right? So I have 8 minus 3. This equals negative 5. So if I didn't have this handy number line here, what I could do is 8 minus 3 equals 5 and turn the 5 value into negative. And that should be kind of obvious for me as I start practicing. 3 minus 8, since I'm subtracting a number that is larger, right? This is a larger value than my original number. I know that it's going to be a negative answer. And this is something you can use when you don't have a number line or you don't have time to make a ginormous number line. Okay, so I'm just taking our concepts that we learned before of moving on the number line. If I have a number, a positive number, right, it's going to start on the right side. I'm subtracting, so I'm moving to the left. So I'm going to subtract. When I'm on the left side, like let's say I started at negative 2, and on our number line, kind of like the rule that we went over, we saw that when we're subtracting a positive number, we move to the left, right? Meaning that the value is going to grow larger to the left. I'm going to take -2. If I move to the left, I need to add those two numbers together to increase my left-sided value. So we'll do this here actually on this process. Let me show you what I'm talking about there. Okay. So here, remember I have 3 and -8. So I used my rule of adding rational numbers with different signs, right? I found the difference of the absolute values and I used the sign of the greater value, right? I did here 8 minus 3, and then I took the negative sign from the subtract 8 and put it here for -5. But now for question number 3, I have Liam was the quarterback on his junior high football team. At their last game, Liam was tackled for a loss of 7 yards, right? When you lose something, when it gets taken away from you, right? Or you lose it, you have negative. So I have -7. On the next play, Liam's team was penalized 15 yards. So that means since he was penalized, right, he didn't lose it, but I do need to subtract it, right? So order of operations, I'm going to subtract 15, the amount of yards that I was penalized. Subtract 15. And it says in these two plays, what is the total loss or gain? Right? When I have the total loss or gain, that usually means the sum. So what I'm going to do, -7 minus 15. If I look at this, I have two numbers with the same sign, right? That means I'm going to be starting on the negative side. I'm going to be starting at the left side, -7, and I'm going to be moving to the left, right? -15. So my value will get larger on the left side. So if I add these two numbers together, let me take the absolute value and add them together. Right, because if I'm adding numbers of the same sign, I just add them together with their value. Then I have 7. I have 15. And since I'm getting larger on the negative side, I need to add them. 7 plus 15 is equal to 22. Okay, but I need to take my signs, I need to put that back in because it's on the left side. Every number on the left side of 0 will be negative, right? I know I moved to the left. So that's going to tell me I should have a 22-yard loss. And that makes sense, right? Because he lost 7 yards and then he was penalized 15 more. Okay, and just on a number line, just so you can see, if I start here at -7, right, and I move over 15, I have -8, -9, -10, -11, -12, -13, -14, -15, -16, -17, -18, -19, -20, -21, -22. Let's see, is that 15 spaces over? Let's see. 1, -1 here, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, -8, -9, -10, -11, -12, -13, -14, -15. Okay, so if I wanted to save time, right, I'd add these two numbers together and throw on my negative sign because I know it's going to be on the left side of 0. I know that I increased in value, right, because I moved further to the left. I went from -7 and moved further to the left. So my answer is A, a 22-yard loss. And this word loss here is my verbal or written expression of -22, right? Because the loss tells me I lost 22. All right, so it is 1:21. Thank you guys all for spending an extra minute with me to hear that explanation. But we learned today that we mixed rules, right? And that got us to a place where we could subtract positive rational numbers using what we've already learned, right? So we can do it with both a number line or without by adding in the rules that we learned last week. With that said, I hope to see most of you guys tomorrow for the field trip. If I don't see you tomorrow, have a great weekend. I'll be able to see you on the 9th. And yeah, have a good day. Bye, y'all. Peace out. Thanks. Have a wonderful day and weekend too. Oh, and thank you for taking care of the chat for me, Anaya. Bye, Kevin. Thanks. Have a good weekend. Kevin, are you going to the field trip? Oh. Bye, Kevin. Other Kevin. The state test, the code, I'll put it in the chat too. If you take the state test, I will have that open for you guys still.